Good evening, welcome. It's 5:31 and I am calling the October 11, 2022 study session of the Historic Site Preservation Board to order. May we please have the roll call?
Yes, Member Miller.
Here.
Member Hanson.
Here.
Member Rosenau.
Here.
Vice Chair Nelson is excused. Chair Huff,
Present.
you have a quorum.
Okay. May we please have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall bulletin board in accordance with established procedure.
Very good. Does the board have any revisions to the agenda for this study session? Okay.
Chair Huff, just
Yes.
to note, because I also sit on the Planning Commission, I will be recusing myself from this study session in front of the Historic Site Preservation Board so that I may also participate at the Planning Commission level.
Okay.
So
Very
I
good.
will be signing off. Thank you. I'll see you at the next part of the meeting.
But before you do that, may I have a motion to approve the agenda? So make a motion, someone, to approve the agenda. Okay, Mr. Rosenau. And then may I have a motion by Mr. Rosenau? May I have a second to approve the agenda? Okay, second by Member Hanson. Is there any discussion about the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed? Okay, motion passes. How many are we? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 to 0. Thank you. So you may be excused. So this time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values all comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned to each speaker. Testimony for public hearings are taken at the time of that hearing. So staff, has anyone requested to comment on a item that is not on today's agenda?
No, nobody has contacted us, but what I would suggest is if there are members of the public who are here today on this study session who would like to speak at this time of public comment, please turn on your video and you can do either the raised hand function or simply raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Anybody here in the public wishing to speak during public comment? I see Mr. Kalon is raising his hand.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
My name's Stephen Keelan. I'm Vice President of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation. And we've reviewed the materials that were sent out, and it was unanimous that we really thought that these plans were good from a historic preservation standpoint. The Palmer Sabin original house is being sensitively repurposed for this, and the other buildings that cascade down the hill are also being simplified a little to more accurately reflect how they were originally. I met last week with Katie Horak from Architectural Resources Group, Tim Gleason, and also Sam Hickman from Soho House. And they answered questions that I had. So, overall, I think this is a great thing to have Soho House in Palm Springs. And the way that the historic buildings are being dealt with is completely appropriate and done very well. So that's what PSPF would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here wanting to speak during public comment from the that are here from the public? If so, turn on your camera and unmute yourself or raise your hand under the reactions button.
So Patrick Jordan.
Hi, everybody. So
I think that the plan, first of all, the overall plan is a game changer for Palm Springs. I think it's a game changer for downtown, and I think that it's a game changer in the fact that Soho House and what Tim and Jarrett and crew have done so far are being so cognizant of the historic provenance of the buildings and of the site in general. And it's not very often that you have somebody that comes in with this level of sophistication to take in the historic nature of what's going on here. In fact, I think it's going to enhance it and make it all the better. And I am 100% behind it.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak during public comment?
Yes, please. I don't know. Can you see me?
We
Sorry.
can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, here, sorry, I have
Now we can see.
problems. Okay. I just want to say, as president of the Palm Springs Historical Society, that Soho House and Tim Gleason have done an extensive research in our archive. They're being highly respectful of the historic buildings. The restoration that they have planned is superlative, and the Historical Society is in support of their efforts.
Very good. Thank you. Any other speakers? Any others? Patrick, you still have your hand up. So, okay, any other speakers? Okay, seeing no additional speakers, we will proceed to the study session discussion. Soho House, Palm Springs is proposing alterations to the Colony 29, also known as the Burham Art Colony, a Class 3 historic site located at 137 to 147 South Tockwitz Drive. The project submitted today as a study session in which no action will be taken. This is a discussion for the board to ask questions and provide comments. May I remind the board that we shall not imply any approval or disapproval at this time. May I please invite our staff and the applicant to begin presentations.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce Associate Planner Glenn Malacher, who is the case planner for this project.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Chair Hugh. Are you able to see the whole slide presentation? Okay,
Yes.
Great. So as you mentioned, the Soho House project is located at 147 South Tockwitz Drive. The aerial photograph that's before you gives you an outline of the proposed design of the location, which is the historic resources, which are to the right-hand side or at the west end of going up the mountain, and then the flat portion of the site is where new construction for the swim club would be proposed. The members of the HSPB attended a site visit a few weeks ago, and you were able to see the resources themselves. So the project concept is the rehabilitation of 5 buildings, and my presentation will be rather short compared to what ARG will be giving. So this is just an overview. They are proposing to convert the artist colony into 9 hotel rooms. New construction includes a pool house, an entry building, pool and cabanas, and then an off-site parking lot at the corner of Tockwitz and Kauai. Your packets that were submitted to the board includes a site plan which shows the properties that are contributing and non-contributing, and it also shows new construction, the pool, and the pool house. The applicant's presentation will go over this in much greater detail than I will. So I just wanted to show you a site plan. The study session's goals is to review the site development proposal, review the study, which will be discussed in just a second, alterations to the buildings and landscaping, the proposed new structures. Because The site includes the historic contributing structures. It also involves the class 3 site, involves the new construction. Planning staff is not particularly looking at comments about the new construction itself, the architecture, but how it fits into the site, and also the parking, which will be at an off-site location. So at that point, I'd like to turn it over to Katie. And Katie, if you want me to turn off and have you share yours, that's it for appropriate.
That would be great. Thank you.
Let me unshare and let you go ahead.
Okay. Okay, can you all see my presentation?
Yes.
Great. My name is Katie Horak. I'm a principal at Architectural Resources Group, and thank you to staff for the presentation, and thank you to Chair Huff and to the HSPB members for your attention today. I'm joined this afternoon by my ARG colleagues, Grace Davis and Evan St. Charles, who are working with me on this project. And I'm also joined by Jarrett Stoll from Soho House. So we will all be available at the end of this presentation to answer any questions that you might have. And we're really, really excited to be here to present this project with you all in this study session. So as you know, this project is located at the west edge of the city. It's tucked up against the base of the San Jacinto Mountains. The project site here is outlined in red. And as you know, this is the former Colony 29 site, and it contains 6 existing buildings, hardscape, landscape, and open space. So the green shaded area encompasses the extent of the historic buildings on the site. All 6 buildings within that historic area will be retained and rehabilitated as part of the project. There are no historic features in the eastern portion of the site at all. One of the prevailing goals of the project is the preservation of the historic buildings and the site character. There's truly a deep understanding of the uniqueness of the site, to the cultural history of the city, and from the very beginning, this project has prioritized the preservation of its history and its character. So one thing I'll just mention quickly while we're on this slide is that Soho House also acquired the Willows, Bishop, O'Donnell House, and Les Valeries, kind of up to the top right, and then off of this map here. Although the project does not include work to any of those buildings, so I won't be discussing those any further. So none of the buildings on the site have been previously designated as Class 1 or 2 historic sites, nor are they listed in the California or national registers. 5 of the buildings were identified in your 2018 Citywide Historic Resources Survey, but because the surveyors weren't able to get onto private property, the buildings were assigned a status code 7N, which means need more study. So this gave the buildings Class 3 status. So our work included in-depth research and analysis of the property as a whole. And as part of this study, we determined that the collection of historic buildings on the site is eligible as a Palm Springs Historic District, as well as for listing as a district in the California National Registers. So one building, although it dates to the historical period, this building here, 137 South Tackwitz, was found to be a non-contributor because it's been significantly altered. And there's one other building here, 145 South Tackwitz, that's not part of the historic artist colony. It was constructed in the early 2000s, around 2006. So the first 2 buildings to have been constructed on site were the residence and studio of painter Alson Skinner Clark, and these are 139 and 141 South Tackwitz. Although we don't know the original architect of these buildings, we do know that they were built for Clark and that he occupied them until 1945. Clark is a renowned American Impressionist painter who had a primary residence in Pasadena and seems to have used these buildings seasonally. The third building in these images at right is 137 South Tackwitz, was built around the same time, but it's unknown who commissioned its construction. And it's also been significantly altered. So this is our non-contributor. So just some existing photographs of these buildings. The 2 buildings on the left are the Clark residence and studio today, and then on the right is 137 South Tackwitz. Clark's buildings have endured some alterations over time, including a 2nd-story addition on the studio building, the addition of some balconies and pergolas, new stucco, some new windows and paint. But despite these mainly cosmetic changes, we determined that they still retain sufficient integrity to convey their significance. 137, however, on the right has been so dramatically altered that it no longer retains sufficient integrity to be a contributor to the district, although the project does include some stripping back of some of the exterior finishes that you see in this image, which will help restore some of that integrity. About 2 years after Clark finished his home and studio, John Burnham constructed his own house and studio at 147 and 143 South Tuckwitz. Burnham commissioned Pasadena architect Henry Palmer Saman to design the house and studio. Although Burnham was an aspiring painter, his enduring legacy in Palm Springs is that of a patron of the arts. In addition to cultivating a small rotating community of artists here, he also funded the Palm Springs Art School, which opened in 1930. Burnham taught classes at the school and he invited artists to stay at this property with him. And due to the seasonal and temporary nature of their visitation, it's been really hard for us to track down exactly who stayed at the property and when, since it was never their permanent residence. But we do know from research that artists such as Maynard Dixon, John Hilton, Jimmy Swinnerton, Clyde Forsyth, and Nicolay Fasheen spent time at the property. So this is the Burnham residence at left, and then the studio at right today. And original drawings and specifications for this house are in Sabin's archive at UC Santa Barbara, which in addition to the great research that we've had access to at the Palm Springs Historical Society, this research at UC Santa Barbara has been just incredibly helpful to us in this project. So in summary, we determined that this collection of buildings is significant for its association with the early community of visual artists in Palm Springs, largely cultivated here by Burnham. The John Burnham Artist Colony Historic District is eligible for listing in the National and California registers, as well as the City of Palm Springs Historic District. We determined that the period of significance is 1926 to 1954, starting with Alston Clark's tenure and then ending when Burnham sold the property to Francis Crocker, who was also a notable Palm Springs resident for completely different reasons. We also determined that the Burnham House and Studio and the Clark House and Studio are eligible as Class 1 historic sites. So now I'd like to just talk a little bit about the proposed project, particularly as it relates to the historic buildings on the site. So this is a proposed site plan that shows the locations of the existing buildings in relationship to the new development. And you'll note that almost all new construction is isolated from the historic buildings to the east of the driveway. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the primary goal of this project is the retention and preservation of all the historic buildings and character on site. All the existing buildings will be rehabilitated in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. They're really only being touched to the extent necessary for universal accessibility and life safety and for minor cosmetic changes. In some instances, later alterations to historic buildings will be reversed, including removal of some non-historic decorative elements. And new construction in this area is limited to a small detached accessible restroom, which is up near the Burnham residence. Detached, and putting the restrooms here really allows us to not have to interrupt the interior of the Burnham house by providing accessible restrooms inside. By keeping them outside, we don't have to intervene as much inside the historic residence. So we decided to put those restrooms outside, sort of tucked away to the back. And then there's also, in addition to the non-historic building here, number 6 on the site plan, adding a second accessible hotel room here and attaching it to the entry gate that spans the driveway. So I'd like to mention just that ARG is the design architect for all the work on the existing buildings, just ensuring that all work continues to comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards. And the team also includes our RDA architects who are designing the new buildings on the site. So this rendering shows the Burnham House lower deck as envisioned by the project. The existing non-historic pool will be removed and the residence will be rehabilitated. The detached restroom facility that I mentioned is kind of tucked back here behind the umbrellas, as you can see, detached and tucked away behind the house. And then this is a rendering of the upper deck at the Burnham residence with the house at left. All historic character of the house, including all of its original materials, will be retained. New construction as part of the project takes place almost entirely at the eastern portion of the site, and it includes the pool house, the pool itself, cabanas, lounge, the entrance gate, and some outdoor spaces for food and beverage program. All new buildings have been designed in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards as they relate to new construction and compatibility. The new buildings draw inspiration from the late 1920s period revival aesthetic of the existing buildings while clearly being buildings of today as directed by the standards and guidelines. And finally, I'll just end our presentation with a couple of renderings of the new construction. This here showing the simple arcades of the cabanas straight ahead and the pool house to the left. And then looking west from the second-story terrace of the pool house, the view of the Burnham house is prominent on the hillside above. Again, the simple repetitive arches of the cabanas and the arcade on the right are reminiscent of 1920s Palm Springs while expressing the detailing and materiality of contemporary construction. That concludes our presentation. Again, we're really thankful for your consideration, and our team is happy to answer any questions that you might have about the project.
Thank you, Katie. Let me just pop up my presentation and we'll finish off very quickly here. So next steps, what will take place is that there is a SQL analysis that's ongoing currently, and that will continue looking at impacts of biological, cultural, any kind of noise, traffic, and that is continuing on. We are anticipating a Planning Commission study session in either November or December. HSPB will review the alterations to a Class 3 site later on, and Ken may be able to help us with the scheduling of that. The PC will review the conditional use permit, and then ARC, our Architecture Review Committee, reviews the architecture and landscaping of the new construction on the site, and then we move into building. Well, that concludes my presentation. Ken may want to add some additional information.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Katie. I just want to facilitate this with Chair Huff. The comments, questions, suggestions, recommendations, concerns that each of the board members have is what the applicant is seeking today. We've handled this as a study session for a couple of reasons. It's a complicated project and it's touching some of the most incredible historic resources in the city. One thing that has not been mentioned, but there's also a fragment or a portion of the Tockwitz ditch on this site. And I believe that the Historic Resources Group report does address that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Huff. Once we conclude with all of your questions and so on, we will wrap the study session up and then adjourn to your regular session at 6:30.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentations. And I would just like to make some comments and then invite other board members to ask questions or share their comments as well. And of course, pleased to learn from you a couple of times that the alterations and all the work are consistent with the standards, for the treatment of historic properties as set forth by the Secretary of Interior, as you kindly mentioned. And, just urging that the new construction and that the additions around the historic buildings are consistent, with the scale, the massing, the materials and colors, the finishings that exist on the historic buildings. And it is wise, I believe, to document in an archival file new work and new components to distinguish some of the new elements from those that are original. I think that's important to have that documentation so it's very clear. You'll do a wonderful job, and we won't know the difference between what was historic and what is new, hopefully. And of course, I want to add that I'm hopeful that, any proposed alterations, around into the historic buildings could also restore lost or deteriorated features, as there are, and remove any past alterations that impair the site's historic integrity. So those are just a couple of thoughts that you've really stated, and I'm just reinforcing them, for the record. And I would like to invite other board members to ask questions or make comments. So who would like to speak? Okay, Member Hanson.
Yes, first of all, I just wanted to let the audience know that the board did take a very extensive tour of the property a couple of weeks ago with the project managers and ARG and Katie Horak, kind of leading the charge for us. And it was extremely informative. It was really, really great to be on site and to get a real feel for what we're talking about with this project. I also wanted to just commend city staff on the care that they're taking with this and, their understanding of how important this site is historically. Having said that, and Ken mentioned it's a very complicated project, but I think the way it had been presented to us actually makes it quite uncomplicated. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding, and I really have no concerns. I'm glad to hear that the members of the public have no concerns, and the important heritage organizations, within the city, speaking on behalf of the project. I think maybe I don't really have any questions either. Maybe just a point that we brought up while we were touring to consider, and I know we're not here, right now to talk in any detail about the project, but maybe to consider nominating the resources, the district and any eligible resources for designation, possibly as part of the final project submittal. So that is really more of a comment than a question. I think maybe just my own personal curiosity, I would be interested to know how long ago you started on this to get us where we are today, because I think a lot of work and thought has gone into planning this project up to this point. And I know you have a little bit of a road ahead of you also, with other workshops and public hearings coming up in the future. So having said that, I'm really excited about this project. I think it'll be a real asset to Palm Springs. And I think that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Member Hanson. Other board comments, please? Member Rosenau.
Yeah, hi, yes, I'm really pleased with this proposal. Couple of quick questions. One, operationally, it's a 9-room hotel and a quite large pool. I was just curious, is it going to be like a day club as well, or the pool open to the other Soho properties like the Willows, or?
Yeah, no, hi, pleasure to meet you. It is going to be part of our global membership offering. The way our membership is structured is that we have local members and we have every house members, generally speaking, depending on the market. We have somewhere between 30 to 40% of our members are local. And then of the remainder of the local members, they sign up as every house. So they have access to all the other amenities and offerings. To touch on the Willows is remaining as it is and open to the public hotel, continuing to operate the way Tracy has over the past many years. So it is intended to be a swim club under its guidance, and it will have access for our members globally if they are down in Palm Springs.
Okay, thank you. Second question, to wrap up my questions. Does Soho House want to pursue Class 1 or Class 2 historic status in this project?
Katie, you want me to take that? I'm happy to.
Please. Yep.
So no, it's our desire to pursue a Class 1 designation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I wanted to ask if you could tell us just a little bit more about the link, the roadway that will link, the north of the property to, the end of Tockwitz. Can you tell us a little bit about what that will feel like?
In terms of the connection around that doesn't exist today?
Yes.
Yes, so our desire is to look to reinstate the historic road there. One, obviously, it does a fair amount for protecting the tennis club neighborhood and traffic mitigation, given the fact that we obviously have Les Valeries, Willows, Bishop, and the Blue House as well. Our plan, as you've probably seen, is for us to have transportation through electric vehicles and all of the parking to be consolidated next to Les Valeries on the lot adjacent to it. So the idea is that without running through the neighborhood, we have our own transportation and road into the back of the property. But obviously something that has not been run through and approved with the city. It's a plan at the present moment.
Good. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments that board or staff wish to make during this study session?
None from me.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone? This is your chance. So, seeing no further discussion from the board, I want to thank the applicants for your very nice presentations and so clearly mapping this out for us and explaining it to us so very well, as well as staff. And I hope the board's comments that we briefly made will assist you in finalizing your application for alterations to this Class 3 site. And we look forward to welcoming you back here again very soon.
And, Madam Chair?
Yes.
The other thing I do want to just mention as a footnote, as Glenn did mention in his presentation, this will be coming back to you at some time in the near future for consideration of alterations to a Class 3 site. The CEQA document and the initial study and findings will also be a public document that will be on public review for a 20-day public comment period. And when we have that document, I will also forward a copy of it by PDF to each of the HSPB members so that you will have time to review the CEQA documents and ask any questions through the CEQA process on the project.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So shall we adjourn the study session and take a little break before we begin our regular meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board? Okay. May I please have a motion to adjourn the study session? Motion? Okay, Member Rosen now has made a motion and a second by Member Hanson. Is there any discussion about the motion? And seeing none, all in favor to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Okay, all in favor passes 3-0. So I thank you all for participating, and we'll take that little break, board members, before we call the regular meeting to order promptly at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have to leave this meeting?
We'll
formally?
conclude this meeting, and what will happen is when you have a coffee break right now or a muffin
Yeah.
break or whatever, and then once 6:30 rolls around, just come right back in and sign into the meeting as you did before.
Okay,
Yeah,
super.
I've removed all the other participants, so it's just us, and then I can readmit everyone at 6:30.
Okay, all right, a little bit before.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit before.
Promptly.
good.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Thank
And,
you. That went very well.
I was going to say, I want to thank you for doing a good job of facilitating that.
Oh, sure. Everybody did a great job.
Yep.
Yeah, but very pleased. So thank you.
Yes.
And I'll see you in a little bit of time.
Yes, we
Bye-bye.
will. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Good evening. It's 6:30 and I am calling the October 11, 2022 general meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board to order. May we please have the roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Member Miller? Member Hanson?
Here.
Member Rosenau?
Here.
Vice Chair Nelson is excused. Chair Huff?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. May we please have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, the agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board on the west side of Council Chambers by 6 p.m. on Thursday, October 6th.
Thank you. Does the board have any revisions to the agenda? Any revisions? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay. I
Second.
have a second. Okay. I have a motion by Member Hanson and a second by Member Scott. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. So motion passes 4-0. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned to each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of that hearing. So staff, has anyone requested to comment on an item not on today's agenda?
No, but Mr. Jeff Piper is here representing the ownership of the 500 South Indian Canyon Drive building, who probably would like to speak to you at this time.
Okay.
So you okay if I talk now?
Yes, please. We welcome you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. And just want to point out, so on the 500 building, which we own, it is our goal in life is for nothing to change, as in we want the tenant to stay, everything's going great. Unfortunately for us, US Bank bought Union Bank. So right now we're not sure what's about to happen. And we're very concerned that if we have to go down this path, it's going to create a hardship on it, where the building one won't be worth as much money. We'll have a much more difficult time finding a quality tenant that belongs on a great street like that in a great part of the town. Instead, we're going to be looking at, with a lot of the rules on it, the bigger, nicer tenants don't want to deal with those sort of circumstances. They'll look for a different building. So that's part of where our concern is. And we don't really want to have a pot dispensary or a homeless shelter or something like that, because it's not good for any of us. And so we're really trying to figure out is how do we work within the system? If, again, our goal is not to change anything. We don't have any intention of doing anything, but we just know that the lease is coming up and we're going to have to deal with this. And if we're going to have to go down this path, can we just limit it to the tablets? If those are really the main part of what this is looking about, and we're happy to donate them, we're happy to move them to City Hall and put them in a museum, whatever you guys want to happen. But we're just trying to figure out how to do this so it doesn't box all the process into a corner which makes it super costly and makes it so no quality tenant really wants the space because they don't want to deal with the time and efforts. So we're not for this, but we're not trying to do something that's going to be disruptive to what it's going to be. We understand if something has to change, it's going to go through the city process, and we're going to have to go through and deal with how it needs to look. And we understand where we bought a building and how things look there. We're just trying to minimize the amount of effort and expenses if we have to deal with a new tenant. So thank you very much for letting me speak, and we'll go through the process.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
I don't think there's any at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. Seeing no additional speakers, we will proceed to the next item, which is the election of officers. Staff, would you please officiate the election of officers?
Yes, normally we would do this in June, but we're a little bit, or I mean in July, but we're a little late. So the city clerk has asked us to go ahead and reaffirm your election of officers. This will last through July of 2023. So let me first open up the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair. Who would like to make a nomination for the position of vice chair? Member Hanson?
I nominate Jade Nelson for the position of vice chair.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Member Rosenau?
I'll second the nomination for Jade.
Okay. Any other nominations at this time for vice chair? All right. All in favor of member Nelson as vice chair, please raise your hand. It passes unanimously 4-0-1. So it's either he'll be happy when he finds out, or he'll know that you guys did something while you weren't there. Okay, moving on to the position of chair. Can I have any nominations from the floor for the position of chair? Janet?
I nominate Chair Huff for the continuing position of chair.
Okay, so we have a nomination for Chair Huff. Are there any other nominations from the floor at this time? All right, then seeing no other nominations, may I please have a show of hands of those who wish to nominate Chair Huff for a continuation in the position of chair? And you have another unanimous vote. So that is 3-0-1 with one abstention. And so your officers from now until July of 2023 are as you have had them. Congratulations, Chair Huff, and congratulations, Vice Chair Nelson. I turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for handling that election. And I'm delighted to continue. Thank you very much. Next, we will proceed to the consent agenda. Are there any revisions to the minutes of the meeting of September 6, 2022? Any revision? Nope. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 6, 2022?
So moved.
Okay, so is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, so I have a motion by member Miller and a second by member Rosenau. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? None. So motion passes 4-0. So next, there are no public hearings today or any unfinished business. So let us proceed to agenda item 4A, new business. This is an application by the City of Palm Springs for possible historic designation of the Security First National Bank building located at 500 South Indian Canyon. Staff, would you please provide a brief summary on this project?
Yes, as noted in the staff report, this has been one that you had brought forward as a revision to your work plan. You had originally given us direction to proceed. In doing so, we felt it was important for the city to have its own independent historic resources report. So we secured the services of Northwest Resource Consulting, who have provided a historic resources report. The original historic resources report was prepared by the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation. They had done so without owner support. And so they had approached the board to take this on as a city nomination. And out of making sure that this is our report in terms of the city's efforts to investigate the building. We did bring on the second report. So what you have in your packet is both the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation report as well as the Northwind report as well. And so I'm recommending that you accept both reports since they both do have information and data about the property, and direct staff to schedule site visits and to schedule a public hearing for you to consider the nomination.
Okay, so I understand the recommendation is to receive both reports and direct staff to schedule site visits and a public hearing to consider the application. May I have a motion to that effect, please?
So move.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Rosendahl. May I have a second, please? A second by Member Scott. Is there any discussion about the motion? Okay, seeing none, I call for the question. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0. Let us proceed to agenda discussion item 5A with a report from Member Hansen on the subcommittee for the 2023 Preservation Matters Symposium. Member Hansen?
Yes, thank you. I'll just give a very brief update on where we're at. Jade Nelson is the chair and I am his co-chair for this conference. And as advisors, we have Catherine and Dick Perquette, who worked on the symposium in previous years. And the reason we only have 2 people, I think we mentioned at the last meeting on the committee, is that we now have a board of only 5 members. So we can't have a quorum of members at the meetings. So Catherine will be serving in an advisory capacity and there won't be 3 of us at any of the meetings. So just very briefly, our working title, which is, pretty firm at this point, is A Mirage Becomes an Oasis, Water and Tourism in Greater Palm Springs. So as that implies, the topics are going to be about water and tourism. The dates have been inked, April 29th and 30th. And it will be in the Palm Springs Convention Center again, which I think has worked out really well in the past. So as you know, there will be, day 1 registration and exhibits 1 to 2, and the symposium from 2 to 4:30, and then tours from 5 to 6, somewhere in that time range. And day 2, the symposium will be from 2 to 5, with again the hour before that for registration and exhibits. So we've got a really good lineup of speakers and topics for next year. I think it's probably 95% inked, and the people who aren't fully inked have really committed to doing it. I think there's some little massaging being done on some of the topics. So we're really well on the way. We ended up moving it to later in April to be able to hold it at the convention center. So I think we're doing very well on time this year. In some aspects, maybe a little bit ahead of time. So, the next steps are just getting the rest of the people on board. They run some of the behind the scenes thing. And I know Eric and Catherine have volunteered to help with the tours. So we'll get working on that. And, but, we have plenty of time. And I think that's really where we are right now. We're working on getting a host as well, which I think is one of the things we need to do this month. And we're meeting monthly at this point. As we get further on into next year, we'll have a couple of meetings a month, probably in March and April. So if anybody has any questions, you can contact me or Jade, and that's pretty much where we are, moving along.
Mr. Lyon.
I just want to report that on the question about sponsorships, I did speak with procurement, and the board will be able to seek sponsorships for such things as the food and drinks and beverages, or the
Great.
production of the printing material and things like that.
Great, that's great.
Excellent.
I assume we can talk about it Tuesday. We have a meeting next Tuesday. So
Yep.
that's great to hear. That's
Good.
it for me.
Well, excellent. Gosh, way ahead of the schedule and right on target and doing a super job. So thank you so very much for this hard work. So next on the agenda is comments from the board. Do we have anyone that would like to make further comments today? Anyone more comments from the board? Okay. Does the staff have any additional comments?
I have just a few. First of all, I want to recognize former Chair Dick Burkett, who has been working on the subcommittee and the symposium and is our link to keeping us on a steady and straight path for this symposium. Just quick notes, Modernism Week, the fall version is this coming week, and the HSPB unmanned booth will be again, we've been invited to be at the convention center. So I'll be setting up the booth with our usual yellow banners and handout materials for the Modernism show. Second of all, there was some questions that came up today from a member of the public regarding removal of trees at the Bank of America. Those were items that I did review at an HPO level. The trees were causing problems in the sewers at the bank, and the bank asked if they could remove them. The city's policy is basically remove a tree, plant a tree. So I required them to plant 3 additional shade trees in the parking lot in exchange for the removal of those 3 palm trees. The palm trees were not original trees. I did verify that from looking at the original historic photos. They were planted sometime after the building was built. So the next one is in your packet. You found the Certified Local Government Annual Report. This is something that normally has to be turned in way back in March and April. And for a number of different reasons, it didn't get done until today. So I will be turning that in tomorrow. Related to that, normally we have, there are certified local government grants that we can apply for only if we've turned in our annual report. So the grants have already been submitted and I believe awarded, but what happened is we got a contact from the Office of Historic Preservation in Sacramento that there's some unspent funds. And so I will be submitting, it's a very simple 1-page application to see if we can, Claudia, that money over to the city of Palm Springs for some work. One thing I've been talking about with Director Hadwin is the idea of possibly putting some, I'm going to draw a blank right now, the UPC labels, the little square grid of things that you find on menus and things. We've been talking about the idea of putting UPC labels on some of our historic markers that would allow a person who's viewing the property to not only read the couple of lines of information that's on the marker, but to also be able to scan the UPC code and get some additional information and more detail about the property. So we're looking at that as a possible project if we are able to get any grant funds. There was, as the City Council requested, we are going to be conducting monthly site visits with the owner of the Orchid Tree and Historic Community Church. We held this first meeting, I think it was the 3rd of October. There are a number of items that the staff has put the property owner on notice. They must submit and register the buildings as vacant buildings. There are a lot of security issues that are still pending at the site, a lot of cleanup that needs to be done at the site. And so all of that was forwarded in writing to the building owners. And we will be conducting monthly site visits to review their progress on that in the coming several months. And I think that is all I have. Director Hayden, did you have anything else that you wanted to mention? You're muted.
I'm sorry, I was saying nothing additional for me. I think you covered it all, Ken, but thank you.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ken, for catching up. You've been really loaded down with the work, and we're impressed that you're able to catch up and get so much done. Thank you.
Well, I think I can report that we do have a person who the city has made an offer to for the replacement of me as HPO. I believe that person is going to be coming on toward the end of this month. I don't think I am able to tell you who it is because I believe they're still waiting for the formal offer to be accepted. But I hope I will be bringing in a new staff colleague to introduce to you at the November meeting.
Good. I was going to ask. I was afraid to ask. So I'm pleased to hear that. That's moving forward. Keep our fingers crossed.
You have no idea.
Super. I know. So is there any other discussion or comments today? Anything? Okay, seeing no further discussion, this meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board is adjourned to the meeting of Tuesday, November 1st, 2022 at 5:30. And I thank you all for your participation today. Thank you.
I believe that was a record short meeting.
I know. It wasn't 2.5 hours. Wow.
Good job.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Good night.
All right. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. See ya.